Yo boys, it's Dan. Welcome back to the Europa League semi-finals. If you haven't gone and seen the Champions League, some sort of the card up here. Go give it a watch, boys. And without any further ado, we've got we've got two games, two legs, but first legs here. All these teams are well-established teams in this competition, and let's get into. Like and subscribe, and let's get into the Europa League of the semi-finals. Let's starting off with Juventus versus Sevilla. Now, Juventus. On the way, we're going to do each. So Juventus So basically, all these teams came through the playoff basically because they were all either Champions League drop downs, like Juventus and Sevilla were, or second place in the group. Yeah. So basically, Juventus have played Nantes in the playoffs and won 4-1 on aggregate, and then they played and that booked a place in the last 16 against Freiburg, which they won 3-0 against Freiburg, and then that put the place with the Portuguese giants Sporting Lisbon, which they won 2-1 on aggregate against Sporting, and that made a date against Juventus. No, that made a date against Sevilla. It could have easily been Manchester United. We'll go on to that Sevilla game. We'll go on to Sevilla now. So Sevilla in the playoffs, they beat PSV Eindhoven, the Dutch champions. I don't know why I said Netherlands. The Dutch champions under Lord Van Nistelrooy. Then that booked a place with Fenerbahce, and then that booked them a place with Manchester United. Now, what are we going to say about that? Well, I mean, I'm not going to get into too much detail about that game because you'd have heard my rant earlier, but yeah. And I'm going to say it's at Juventus in the first half, so it's into a win. So I'm going to say it'll be a close one, 2-1 Juventus. And now we have the next semi-final, which is AS Roma versus Bayer Leverkusen. Now, AS Roma under Jose Mourinho are playing some good football, and Bayer Leverkusen under the management of Xabi Alonso. Yes, you heard that correctly, Xabi Alonso. Now, Roma's road to the semi-finals was playoffs. Red Bull Salzburg 2-1 on aggregate. Then they had table toppers of Man United's group, Real Sociedad. They beat them 2-0 on aggregate, and then they played against Feyenoord, and they won that 4-2 after extra time. That's our first extra time one, and that made them a date with Bayer Leverkusen. And now you go to Leverkusen's road to the semi-finals. They had Monaco. This was a 5-5 draw. And then Bayer Leverkusen won 5-3 on penalties. So both these two teams have gone for 420 minutes and more in this tournament. And then that made a date in the last 16 with Ferencváros TC, which they blew away. Well, not blew, but 5-3. No, they won that 4-0 in that game. Over two legs that was, and then that made them against Union Saint Gilles in the last 16 in the finals. And I believe it will be AS Roma will get the job. Ooh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to go 1-1 in this game. I'll say AS Roma 1 and Bayer Leverkusen 1. And that will bring the first legs of the Europa League. Once again, I'll see you all on Friday for Premier League. We are getting down to the Premier League nit and gritty. So until then, boys, see you all on Friday. Peace.